Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
There is nobody I would rather be spending my time with on this lovely Tuesday than Matthew Parrino, who is filling in for Sal today. I called in the big dogs. I was like, okay, Capaccio's on vacation, so I need to find a friend to talk about the Bills. Who can I reach out to? And Parrino, you were my first thought, and you said yes, which I very much appreciate it. So thank you for doing this today, good sir.
It's already been too long since I saw that beautiful smile of yours. So I thought, hey, let's get after it, right? Let's talk little Bills.
You know, what's funny is I forgot how impressive the volume with your hair is until I saw you on the screen today, because it has been too long since I've seen you. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, right? We saw each other, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
For the Jim Leonard press conference?
Yes. Yeah. But when you see somebody like 2 or 3 times a week, maybe more, and then when we're on the road together, we're going out to eat and like seeing each other in different on different road trips. And then all of a sudden it just stops for like 2 weeks. It's like, oh man, I haven't seen you in a while.
It's weird. And I think that sometimes people don't understand that. I see the other people who cover the Bills more than I see anybody that I work with besides Dom, from basically July until whenever the season ends. So it is very strange, because for these next, until the combine's next week. So then once the combine starts, then you have this domino effect of like, we kind of get back into the routine. But it is a little strange when you go from go to now, okay, there's a little bit of time to breathe. And I don't like it. I don't like the offseason as much.
I like parts of the offseason. I also like the grind of the season wears me down quite a bit. So when we get to this part, like this month afterwards, to kind of recalibrate a little bit, I need it. And then there's a bunch of like fun parts of the offseason, like the combine. Free agency is fun to cover. And then the owners meetings, and then we get to the draft. So I feel like it's like there's pockets of, and then of course I coach my son's baseball team. So like when we get to that part of the summer, I love the fact that we have this off season where we can kind of dive into other things. Like it's a little different for you because you dive headfirst almost into the Sabres now, right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And the fact that they've been good definitely increases the interest. The Olympic break kind of threw a wrench in that a little bit, which isn't a bad thing. It did kind of really give everybody a reset, which I think was needed. But actually that brings us to I think a good starting point of this offseason has already been substantially crazier than we anticipated because of the decisions that they made. I mean, when we were leaving Denver, I don't want to speak for you. I did not see this coming. I did not think that they were going to fire Sean. I certainly did not think Joe Brady was going to be the next head coach. That's basically a month ago. It might even be a month to the day that they decided to make these changes. Do you feel any differently today than you did a month ago? Are you still surprised by it all? And do you like how it's pieced together?
That's a great question. There's been some comments on some of our shows that like I've been over time since the decision more and more hard on Sean and like the memory of Sean's tenure. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I'd push back on that. I think we were critical all along of the shortcomings while also understanding where he was great. And what I left Denver feeling like was that there needed to be something substantial that changed. And I don't know what that was going to end up looking like. How do you run that back? Like, I feel like it was an impossible decision for Terry Pegula in a lot of ways, because you have this guy that came in and changed everything for your organization, the trajectory of your team, all of those things that Sean McDermott did, while at the same time realizing that after year after year after year of the same result, it may just be time for a new voice, a new vision, all those kinds of things. The thing that really threw a wrench in all of this was the Brandon Beane component of the promotion, when he has to, in a lot of ways, wear a lot of the same responsibility for the failures that Sean McDermott had. And so trying to like square that, like how does he get a promotion in all of this has been, I think, something that fans have struggled the most with. Where I land on it, and call me a Beane apologist, a Beane stan, whatever you want to call me, I would like to see the guy that found Josh Allen given the opportunity to make this roster in his vision alongside Joe Brady. Alignment. I know everybody got like overwhelmed with that term, but it's important. And I think what we realized last year is there was a lack of alignment between Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. And there's just been too many roster decisions over the years that I applaud. And listen, has there been like misses, like early draft round misses? Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Most NFL GMs are going to have them. Kansas City has them. LA has them. Like no matter where you look, there's been guys that have been drafted that have been misses. But I also think at the same time, we don't talk enough about some of the roster pivots, some of the big swings that have materialized in a good way for this team. And now he gets a chance to make it all in his vision. But what also comes along with that is the clock's ticking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the court of public opinion can be really, really tricky. And it also changed because 3 years ago, Brandon Beane could do no wrong. People would be posting their pictures of him in the sunglasses and waiting late into the night on free agency days and saying, like, what's Brandon Beane going to cook up? What's he going to do? And then as the last couple of years have gone on, it felt like it flipped a little bit to Sean being the guy that everybody pointed the finger at, to Brandon now being the guy that a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are like, this roster has not been good enough. But to the point that you just made, I think Brandon can flip this completely if he has a good offseason. Like if they go out and make some splashes, right? I think that he will immediately win back over everybody. And I don't really think that the outlook for the Bills changes much, except that maybe they have a higher ceiling. I mean, is that fair?
100%. And I keep telling people this because I get a lot of fans, like we have an insider text line, like in my DMs, like having conversations about stuff off of the podcast and stories and everything like that. And it's like, trust me, all the people that are right now mad about Brandon Beane sticking around, all it's going to take is him pulling the trigger on one big time deal for a wide receiver that's going to flip everybody on this. And I feel like at the time of that Stephon Diggs trade, like he bought himself years of cachet because that was the kind of swing that I think people were waiting for. And now, like, listen, it's hard to kind of read between the lines, right? Of like, you know, we're hearing things from the Bills in the way that they're talking about the end of the tenure, going back and listening to Sean McDermott's comments with Brandon. They were not on the same page. Like, I think that's fair to say at the very least, without maybe knowing all the inner workings. So now if there's this complete alignment for evaluation paired with what it's going to look like when they get out on the field at One Bills Drive, when they start practicing and then into the games, that to me is something that I'm interested to see what it looks like.
How do you think it looks? What do you think that they do? What is the biggest focus in the next month and a half, right? Because the roster at the end of March is going to probably look substantially different, or at least I think it's going to. I think it would be a really big disappointment if it looks very similar. And we've seen that a couple times in the offseason. I think this is going to be as active of an offseason as they've had since maybe like COVID, 2020, 2021. I think that there's got to be a lot of stuff that changes.
I agree. And I think if you look at right now, it's a good year for that to happen, because if you look at their own free agents, I mean, I go down the list like Bosa, Daquan Jones, Ogunjobi, Connor McGovern, Matt Milano, AJ Epinesa, all the way down, David Edwards. There's really only 2 or 3, maybe 4 names, if you throw in like a Sam Franklin or something, that I even think the Bills are going to be in on. And of course, Mitchell Trubisky is one that I kind of put him in a separate category, depending on the money. Mitch Wisnowski, he was really good for them. What do they want to do with Tyler Bass? Do they want to bring Matt Prater back? All those kinds of secondary conversations. But I'm thinking about Reggie Gilliam. I'm thinking about Connor McGovern, David Edwards, and then Brandon Cooks. That's the 4 for me that I think there's a conversation to be had about bringing any one of those back, and maybe even the entire collective if you can. There are levers to pull to open up considerable cap space. It just comes down to a separate conversation of like, where do you view these players? Like, I'm thinking about a Spencer Brown conversion, Josh Allen conversion. That's going to open up quite a bit of money. The other 2 that potentially offer big money are Ed Oliver and Deion Dawkins, but those are more complex conversations. Where do you see them? You know, Ed Oliver, his fit in Jim Leonard's defense. Deion Dawkins, what's the trajectory for him in his career, and where are you comfortable with paying him $20+ million if you're going to do an extension, which makes sense because if you have him in your plans for the next 3 or 4 years, that can open up quite a bit of savings this year. Get him on another deal, push that kind of can down the road a little bit, and you open up even more space. But is he your left tackle that you see being on this roster in 2029? That's a real hard question you have to ask yourself this offseason, and that could maybe change what you specifically do with some of these contracts. If Ed Oliver's not a fit, do you trade him? Well, trading him will come with a dead cap hit pre-June 1st. Do you want some money after June 1st? There's things you can do after June 1st, and I'm not even closing the door on trades post June 1st. That's something I've been kind of beating the drum about. It's not, business doesn't stop on June or like right after the start of free agency.
No.
And we saw the Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jalen Ramsey trade last year at the end of June. It could be a player for player swap. And we'll get into some of my ideas for what those could potentially look like. Obviously, wide receiver is the position that I think a lot of people are starting to eye trades, but there's a lot of different options. And I think Brandon Beane has to be aggressive, almost as to resuscitate the brand, which I think took a hit.
I think you're spot on. But before we get to what could happen, and this is still a little bit of a what could happen, I'll give you Connor McGovern comes back, David Edwards walks. Right. David Edwards comes back and Connor McGovern walks, or they both walk. What do you think is the most likely outcome?
Connor McGovern back, Edwards walks. To me is the most likely outcome, because even with a full market value extension for Connor McGovern, you're still coming in with a year one salary cap hit of around $5.5 million, $6 million, somewhere around there, depending on the void years. The David Edwards contract has the potential to be just eye-popping. And it's so hard because he's a great player. He's been a great player since they put him in as starter. I just don't think when you have all of these other options on your roster that you can pay your two tackles what they're paying them. Mm-hmm. You're going to potentially pay your center. And the thing about center is, like, I get liking Cedric Van Pran Granger. If you're there on him, maybe that's a conversation that you're having inside the building, and you're more willing to pay David Edwards. I don't get that sense, but I could see that as a possible outcome. To me, they went out and they drafted Osiris Torrance. They have a blueprint for how to draft a guard and get him to start from day one. I mean, Osiris Torrance hasn't missed a snap since they drafted him. And so they're really good at that. And Brandon Beane said something interesting to us the night of Joe Brady's press conference when he did a secondary media scrum. And he talked about, listen, we want both of those guys back, but don't forget 3 years ago when we brought those guys in, the same pro scouting staff that found those two guys in free agency, they're still working. They still have ideas of potential guys that they can go out in this free agency class that maybe we're not even talking or thinking about. Connor McGovern wasn't on my radar at all when they signed him. And now he's become like this unbelievably important cog in that offensive line.
I think they both walk, actually. I really do. And I think that you could I think your justification of it makes the most sense. I think having Connor McGovern back would really, really help them. But I kind of am leaning towards that they both walk, and that this does become either you go out and you try and find 3 years ago Connor McGovern and David Edwards, or this is just, hey, it's an Alec Anderson, Cedric Van Pran Granger, maybe one other person competition, and you see how it ultimately plays out. I don't know that for sure, but I feel like you could do more to your team with the money you were going to pay Connor McGovern than you could, also, which makes sense, right? Like, in my head, that whole time I'm thinking, would you rather have Mike Evans or Connor McGovern next year? And how do you feel about the team with each of those pieces? And I think I would be more excited about the team if they had Mike Evans. I mean, unless you disagree.
No, I like the Mike Evans idea, depending on the money. It's funny too, like, as a side piece of this offensive line conversation with these two interior pieces, they're coming off of a season where Josh Allen had never been sacked more. So that's a piece of this evaluation. Like, okay, we love these two guys. They were actually not really the culprits. Like, if you look at the guys that really allowed the most pressure, you have to look elsewhere. I mean, Torrance was probably the biggest issue, pass blocking of the three, and then the tackles struggled at times. And I know there's some different numbers out there depending on who you look at. But if you lived in a world where you maybe reimagine that a little bit, the issue is you're probably not thinking about the pass blocking part of it. You're thinking about how good of a running team you were this last year. And that's the piece and component of it that I guess we can't really tell. When they get Pat Meyer in the building and they're having these conversations over the last couple of years, he's replacing Aaron Kromer. I know he's like maybe a disciple of Kromer, but that's a huge change from somebody who had his fingerprints all over what they did in the run game. Can they recreate that with what they have in the building now? I think Rob Boris is important in that they've kept him. They're keeping Kelly Skipper. Those are important coaching decisions. But I think that, to me, any outcome would make sense. And I think it will come down to how aggressive they want to be with potential allocating dollars elsewhere that they would might have to spend on those two guys.
So I think, I don't want to assume for you, I think Brandon Cooks will be back. I think they liked Brandon Cooks. I don't think it's going to cost them a lot. Like, I'm anticipating that Brandon Cooks will be back on the Buffalo Bills next year. Do you agree, disagree?
I do think that there's like one other name that could fit the Cooks profile who has a relationship with Josh, and that's Christian Kirk. I really like that idea as well. I'm all in on the Brandon Cooks idea. And the guy if they're keeping Keon Coleman, I almost am bringing in Brandon Cooks just as, like, this sounds so disrespectful. I don't mean it that way, but like the babysitter, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's somebody that came in and really, I think, helped Keon Coleman get on track. And who knows, we can get to the draft, we can get to free agency, and the Bills could trade Keon Coleman. Like, I'm not definitely saying he's going to be here, but Joe Brady was very defensive of him, and even coming out and talking about that pick. So I'm on board with that. I definitely think it's a very likely outcome, but there's some other guys that are on that third tier money wise, like Christian Kirk down the stretch for Houston last year was awesome. And I think fits the Curtis Samuel mold, like, except a guy that might actually produce and stay consistent.
You think Gilliam has priced himself out, or do you think Gilliam's back?
No, because I think even what's pricing yourself out?
It's not much. It's marginal.
Right. And also, you're only going to have a handful of teams that even probably feel like they have the personnel to maximize Reggie Gilliam. So you're now taking, he doesn't have a 32 team pool of teams that he's talking to. So I think if you're talking to 5 teams that have really good run games and could utilize them, how many of those teams are looking for a fullback? How many teams? And he's super close with all the guys that are kind of hanging around here. I mean, some coaches, Boris, Kelly Skipper, and then obviously Joe Brady.
Okay. What is your favorite offseason idea? And that can be anything. That could be addressing a position. That could be a specific player. Is there anything that you get really excited about the potential of happening for this team and ultimately helping them get over the hump? Because I think that that's where now most of the fan base is. We have seen what has happened. What is going to happen next? What is your favorite idea?
All right, I'm going to rank them, and I have 4, and I'm going to rate them from the one I like the most on down. And there's a bunch of different variations here to why I think that. Number 1, I think trading for Brian Thomas Jr. to me is at the top of my list. And I go back to the draft year, and I think that was actually a huge miss by Brandon Beane not getting up in that draft to get him. He ended up trading back and taking Keon Coleman. I'd have been more aggressive there, even if it cost capital, because of what I thought the player is. He's obviously not a super fit for what they're doing there. They have Parker Washington. They have Jacoby Myers. He was kind of like ebbing and flowing. And I think that there could be a world where maybe it's Keon Coleman, maybe it's somebody, maybe it's just draft capital where you can take a swing and pull a trade. And I think that gives you immediately your number 1 wide receiver and takes the need for being overly aggressive in the draft, because this is a draft. Here's part of this. Even if you go out and get one of these guys, my number 2 favorite move would be a trade for Marvin Harrison Jr., which I think will be tougher because he's still so young and a top 5 overall pick. They're going to have a new regime there. How much can you talk them into being willing to move on from him? But I just think that you have to be aggressive, not only acquiring a player, whether it be in free agency or trade. I think the better players are available via trade. I like the Evans idea, but I have some reservations, and we could talk about that in a second. No matter what you do, you need 2 wide receivers in this draft, minimum. no matter what you do, because I think that's the model over the last couple of years. Offenses that have built their groups. I'm looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm looking at the Green Bay Packers. I'm looking at the LA Rams to a degree. They're bringing in guys every single draft year and multiple players. They need to take the defensive line approach from last year's draft and apply that this year in a deep wide receiver class to go get 2, maybe 3, a bunch of different flavors. And if that means with all the new additions that you bring in, that you're cutting Josh Palmer, that you're trading Keon Coleman in July or August, so be it. You need to land on the best 5 when you roll the balls out in September that you can possibly put together if you're Brandon Beane and Joe Brady.
Okay, so we'll get to the other 2 things, the other 2 ideas that you like. But my question to what you just said is, so you would like Brian Thomas Jr. fit more than the Marvin Harrison Jr. fit?
No, I'm arguing for it because I think
it's more likely.
It's more likely and more attainable because of their circumstances. Like, we just don't know enough about having a whole new regime in Arizona and what they think about Harrison.
Yeah, because I mean Marvin Harrison Jr., same draft class. He was talking. I mean, everybody was Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, and we were even having the conversations 2 years ago. Would they be ever considering trading up? And Dunze felt like the one that we were kind of keeping an eye on. Of like, okay, he could kind of be in that like 8 to 10 range. Nobody even considered Marvin Harrison because it was a sure thing that he was going to go in the top 5. But I do like the point you made. Travis Hunter's coming back, and he's going to play offensive snaps. Parker Washington was their best receiver in the playoff game that they had. And then, obviously, they gave Jacoby Myers $20 million a year. That is a ton of money to have tied up in one position, and it doesn't feel like that's needed. So
the other piece of that, too, on top of that, this is such a deep wide receiver class. Why not go get another receiver or 2 if you're Jacksonville, add them to the mix, and then restart the clock on their contracts? Because you're looking at next offseason with Brian Thomas Jr., where he's going to be extension eligible. And if you got all this money potentially tied up in Myers and some other pieces on that offense, and you're paying the quarterback, like, you're looking to like minimize costs.
Are you comfortable if the Bills trade their first round pick this year and some other minor asset for Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yes.
Okay. Because I do think that's what the ask would be. I don't think.
And here's the thing. I just don't think you're getting the level of edge rusher or wide receiver at 26 that's good enough and immediate impact guarantee that would minimize how much I would want to add Brian Thomas Jr. to the offense.
Are either of your next 2 ideas about Jalen Waddle? Because if they're not,
no.
Okay. Would you rather have Jalen Waddle for a first-round pick or Brian Thomas Jr. for a first-round pick?
Brian Thomas Jr. Because he's got 2 more years on a rookie deal. And Jalen Waddle, we don't talk enough about the injuries with him.
I know.
Like, and playing in this climate, I don't know, like, he's always banged up every year. I think he's played, if you take all the receivers that have played in the AFC East over the last 4 years, right? And they've all played for the last 4 years. I'd bet Waddle played the least amount against the Bills because he misses a game or 2 every year.
I know. It feels like every time they're getting ready to play the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle is on the injury report, and it's like, oh, you get the tweet from Schefter the night before, Jalen Waddle not expected to play. I feel like I've only seen him play in person like 5 times, which is crazy considering how many times, they play each other. Okay, what were your other 2 ideas that you really liked?
Here's the one. I'd probably push this to the top of the heap, except I think he might get overpaid in free agency coming off of the Super Bowl. We saw what Josh Sweat got last year. Boye Mafe as the like top edge priority to me is there. Like, his market value is fine, right? 3 years, probably around 32 to 36 million. Anything in that range, I think, sign you up. But he's one of those guys that could get potentially the kind of boost that gets him to maybe like 3 and 45, and I'm out at that number just because you're not. That's the kind of deal you give to somebody that you know is going to be a 10 sack a year guy, and that's not guaranteed. But he gives you juice, he gives you production, and he gives you a perfect fit in Leonard's defense. So I really like that idea. And the other one is kind of like part 2, Reed Blankenship. I really like that idea. I feel like he's a captain. He's interchangeable. I think he was a captain for Philadelphia. If you bring him in I think that gives you the versatility to play Cole Bishop where he's probably more suited to play, which is, that Jordan Poyer role in the box. I know it's a different defense, but like, I think maybe how Leonard saw him coming out, somebody that is real physical, can play at the line of scrimmage. You could put him on tight ends. Like what were we hearing about Cole Bishop coming out of school? He locked Dalton Kincaid up in practice all those years, right? How many times have we seen him really locked up in coverage against tight ends? Like that's what I think that's the next version of Cole Bishop. And I think Blankenship, while I haven't studied him a ton, I think he's got the versatility to play that deep part of the field safety. He's got the athleticism, and he's got like, what's that famous saying? Like, heaven forbid a dude have a little motion. He's got a little motion, dude. Like that dude. Like, did you see his like dance moves a couple years ago when he was on national TV? I'm all about Reed Blankenship. He's a captain. Throw him into the mix. Another kind of like general back there in a defense. I like the idea.
I've never even thought about Reed Blankenship, so I love that you brought that up because I do think that that's a really good idea. Let me ask you this, though, because with those secondary ideas, those are players you would sign. Those are not players you would trade for. If they make those types of signings, not necessarily those specific guys, but plus-level starter signings, and then they just draft their draft picks, is that enough to win people over? Like, if they draft Casey Concepcion in the first round, some edge rusher we've never heard of until 2 weeks ago in the second round, a safety in the third round, and then they make these little splash signings here and there. Is that enough? Because I feel like it's almost going to take a big splash to win people over.
Right. It's a good question. I don't know what could also happen by making a big splash is overpaying for the splash and getting the reverse of that, which is like the real criticism for like blowing it. And I think that's something that Brandon Beane has been really careful at over the years of not making a deal that isn't like an equal kind of deal. I don't think he's going to overpay. Like I saw the guys, the morning show, and not to call them out, but like Jeremy and Joe talking about trading up to 11 in this year's draft. Like that's going to be really like costly. And what happens if you make a deal like that? This is just the devil's advocate of that move. You go up to 11 and get a guy, and it's a Kyer Elam situation or a Max Hairston situation where, Max Hairston's not a good example, maybe like a Cody Ford or something like that, or TJ Sanders, who they traded up 15 spots for. You better be sure that guy you're getting up to 11 for is going to, and I don't even know if that specific thing fits into what you're talking about in like a big splash, like a Justin Jefferson, would you say Jalen Waddle and Brian Thomas Jr. reach the level of big splash that checks the box for you?
I would. I think that if you're talking about adding a wide receiver that probably costs you a first-round pick, I think that quantifies as a big splash. The only other thing that I could really think of, and it wouldn't cost you nearly as much, and A.J. Brown would qualify as a big splash just because of the player. Now, I don't love that idea. I really don't. It's just you could do that and still keep probably your top 2 draft picks and then fill out your team that way. The only other name that comes to mind is Max Crosby. But I don't even really know if Max Crosby is going to get traded because it feels like we do this exact same thing every single year. We did the same thing last year with Max Crosby. So I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I think a big splash requires trading a premium asset. But to your point, then you get a more proven commodity, which I think is valuable for this team when they're trying to win right now.
One little idea, and I think people will be frustrated with this, is like anything to consider as an expectation. And I don't want to say it that way, but one thing that I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks since we heard from Jim Leonard is one of the downfalls of Sean McDermott's coaching staff over his tenure is the lack of ability to develop defensive linemen.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Jim Leonard and his crew in year 1 could potentially develop a Javon Solomon, who's been basically like invisible for his first 2 years. There's obviously traits that they liked about him. Go and look at Josh Sweat's first 2 seasons in the league. Okay. 2018 and 2019, 0 sacks in 2018, 4 sacks He played in 16 games, no starts, 16 total tackles. Like, the guy was basically invisible his 2 years in Philadelphia. Now, that was a really good defensive line, all those kinds of things. Then all of a sudden, year 3, 6 sacks, 7.5 sacks, 11 sacks. And then obviously what he did in the Super Bowl, he kind of over time turned into this legit dude. And I'm not saying to have that expectation for Javon Solomon, but I think I'm going to change the math a little bit for my expectations of guys on the roster, young guys, because it's a whole new crew of coaches that potentially can sink their teeth into these guys and maybe develop some of them.
Is it crazy for me to say that even with the departure of Sean McDermott, who I think was a very good coach and obviously a very brilliant defensive mind, that I am more optimistic with the defense moving forward than I have been in a long time? And that's strictly, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid with Jim Leonard. Every time I think about this defense, I go to the end of the season when they have kind of just fallen on their face. Like, I think the outside perspective is so interesting because we are so hyper close to all of it. Everybody who covers the Bills, but also just follows the Bills. When I was talking about the decision to fire Sean McDermott with a couple of our colleagues in Denver, they were like, why were you surprised? Every year in the playoffs, the defense sucks. And I was like, when you say it like that, it kind of oversimplifies it a little bit. But now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I think this defense, with some of the pieces they have, has a level that can be reached that they have not gotten to in a long time, which I think is exciting if you're a Bills fan.
That's very fair for you to say. And I think most of us have been saying that over the last couple of years. What muddied the waters is just the idea that Terry would be hesitant to make a change because of what that could look like on the other side. And I think that's why it always made sense if they were going to move off of McDermott, that it would be Beane kind of staying and running the ship a little bit. Because if they would have fired both at the same time, do you really trust Terry Pegula to find not only a general manager, but a head coach? Like, at least there's some type of sustainable, immediate sense of leadership that's in place. I mean, you have to give Brandon Beane a little bit of the credit for the last 8-9 years for what's been built here. I think that that's fair. And then I think Joe Brady's done a really good job. He produced the 2024 NFL MVP and the 2025 NFL rushing champion. So he's doing something right on the offensive side of the ball. The issue, for the most part, has been defense. Even in the Denver game, Josh Allen's worst playoff game performance since the Houston Texans in 2019. They still should have won. They scored 30 points.
I know.
That to me is where you take all the other stuff out of it. It had to end with McDermott. That's just where I'm landing here with weeks and weeks now to sit here and think about it. And if that's unfair to Sean, I kind of don't care. He had 8 years with Josh Allen to make it to a Super Bowl. They didn't get there. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. However, man, I can't think of a more pressure-packed job in the league right now than what Joe Brady's walking into.
No, you're 100% right. Before we let you go, my final question has nothing to do with the Buffalo Bills. Give me your most overrated ride at Walt Disney World.
Wow. Dude, I'm going to make a lot of people upset in my household, I think.
I love that. I love that. I have an answer too, but I want yours. Okay.
Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
Hell yes. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Here's
so overrated.
So many elements to this. Yes. Great ride. Fun ride.
Yep.
If it was like Everest in Animal Kingdom, fine. You walk in there in the morning. You can ride Everest probably 3 times before you start your day. Mine Train has an hour-and-a-half wait when you wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning before you even head to the park. So that's my first problem. The other problem is it's super short. I went to Universal this last year. We took the kids for Luke's birthday, and we rode Hagrid, the roller coaster there, the Harry Potter ride. It's amazing. It's what Mine Train should be and is not. It's kind of like similarly, but you can never get on it. What's the ride? Slinky Dog. It's like that a little bit. I like Slinky Dog more because the kids are more like about Toy Story and everything like that, but very similar.
It's also a better ride, Slinky Dog, than Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I agree with you. If Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was a ride that topped out at 45 minutes to an hour wait, if it was kind of like Big Thunder Mountain, then I think it would be a lot easier to stomach. But the line is always absurd. Mine is, I was going to say Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but you did. Mine is a little controversial, but I think this one is very much tied to how nostalgic you are. And for me, this was never part of the rotation. I think Peter Pan is incredibly overrated because when I was a kid, that was not a ride that we included every time we went. So I don't have any like sentimental connection to it. And for me, the idea of waiting an hour for a 2-minute dark ride where not much happens doesn't ever make much sense.
So I put that, I guess in this, I can't say this thing. People just absolutely fry me. I think that's very similar to me, like Pirates. But so, here's the thing. I love Pirates now because of how much my wife and kids love it. Like it's like she went there since she was a kid. So I only started going when I met Caitlin. So like I only have the last 8 to 10 years of experience at the Disney World and Disneyland. I didn't watch any of the Pirates movies, or if I did, I don't really remember them. So it's not like a nostalgic thing for me. So I put those kind of all in the bucket. And then I have another thing. All the 3D rides, I can't do them. I'm just out on them. Like Ratatouille, I love it. And they changed it now, right? It's not 3D anymore. But those things really mess me up.
Yeah, I won't even go. It's not necessarily 3D, but it's motion simulators. I will not do Mission Space. There's zero chance. Yeah. And I will never do Star Tours. I have no interest in Star Tours whatsoever. There are so many other things that I think are more enjoyable. When are you back soon? Are you going back soon? You are, right?
Oh my God, dude. Listen to this lineup. So we got about 2.5 months left on the annual passes. So we're going family trip, April break. Me and my wife are going down right before it ends for like a little anniversary weekend. So like call, because that's where we started it, was on our anniversary last year. And then we just booked Port Orleans with her family in July.
You're such a sicko, man.
This is it. I told her, this is it. We knocked this off, and then we're going to be done at least until the winter.
You're amazing. Tell everybody where they can follow all of your work.
Shout Buffalo Football Podcast on all your favorite platforms. I hope I did Sal proud, who's out on a cruise ship right now, getting after it.
Not a Disney guy, Sal. Not a Disney.
Yeah, not a Disney guy. Listen, nobody's perfect.
You know what? When I was out on Sal with his Disney take was when he was like, "But we could just go to Legoland," and I was like, "I've never heard a worse take in my life."
Dude, that's the kind of thing that gets you erased from a group chat. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, thank you to Matthew Parrino for joining us. Follow all of his work. He is phenomenal at what he does. Thank you for doing this, and I'll see you soon, buddy.
All right, buddy. Take care.